So shout out to the Nissan Figaro forums for giving a way to test this, as well as a gentleman from Facebook that I'll mention his name here in a little bit so I can make sure to pronounce it right. This is the cold start valve for the Nissan, or 1991. This is the cold start valve for the 1991 Nissan Figaro. It is a common fault item. Today I'm going to test it as well as clean it, and then try to figure out how to get that bolt out of my intake manifold that is facing the firewall, which is not going to be a fun task, but needs to be done no matter what. So this is held on by a older type Nissan 2-clip plug. It has a little metal spring retention clip that goes around the outside. I promptly dropped that on the floor, so I'll have to find that as well. Try not to lose those. All the old like 1980s 280ZXs have these same type of clips, like for injectors and everything else. But here's the cold start valve. It works by bringing air in through this port, has a shutter in this side, and as the temperature heats up based on a 12-volt heating coil, actually opens up a shutter valve inside of this. The car's been running today, so it's already warmed up, so I'm going to drop this in the freezer after I check the impedance of the part itself. But yeah, thanks to all the people out there online that have given good sort of directions on how to get this done. First, let's check the impedance, which needs to be 80 ohms. So going to my multimeter, going to resistance, needs to be 80, so I'll put it on the 200 range, on. Okay, here and here. Okay, we're at 82 ohms, which is fairly close to what it's supposed to be, so I'm going to consider that check pretty good. I mean, it's within a couple ohms. That's not a bad difference there. So now I got to get a screwdriver, get this piece off, and sort of take a look and maybe try to clean it up. Again, I think with that bolt in the back that's broken, I might have found my problem. So I don't know if you can see this, but the valve is actually halfway open and it looks super clean inside. I'm really believing that this piece is actually like close to brand new. I mean, just how much road grime and everything like that is on it, I just don't see that this is causing all the problems for this engine. So I'm gonna pop it in the freezer to see whether it opens up fully, and then hook it up to 12 volts across the pins and see whether I can watch it open up the rest of the way, or close the rest of the way. Thanks for watching. So this has been in the freezer for about 5 minutes. The valve appears to have opened a bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and spray in some brake cleaner, or excuse me, some carb cleaner, and see whether or not we can flush out any kind of crap. So pinch this off. Yeah, I really do believe that this thing is like in like perfect shape. It looks in great shape. The outside looks super clean. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put 12 volts to it and see whether it'll heat up. Be careful on this, putting 12 volts on it, because you can definitely short. So I'm going to go and get some electricity. I went ahead and used the battery along with some jumper cables and actually attached them to this plastic table, and then was able to just sort of wedge the wires in there to make sure I have 12 volts, and then I held it to the cold start valve right where it needed to go, and just held them in place patiently and waited for the valves to move around. Alright, so I tested the cold start valve. It's got 80 ohms. I put it in the freezer. I saw the valve open up. I put 12 volts across the pins, and the valve closed. So I'm thinking that it's not a cold start issue. I did have this wonderful thing, which is the bolt out of the back of the intake manifold break. So I've got to figure out a way to get that bolt out of the intake manifold and see whether or not maybe it was just the vacuum leak that was causing all these issues. But that is where I'm at right now. I don't believe I need to spend $100 on a cold start valve, so that's good news. The bad news is it's not a $100 cold start valve, which is just money and then you're done. So, yep, keep looking for the source of the fact that it takes forever to start up and run on its own power. Thanks for watching. Danielle, you want to be in this part of the video? She said no. She doesn't want to be in this part of the video. She hadn't done up her hair yet, put on normal clothes. She's just in her pajamas. So I took the cold start valve out, which you saw earlier in the video. There's a bolt broken in the back of the intake manifold, so I'm going to actually remove the upper intake manifold as well as the butterfly valve, and I'm going to go ahead and clean the butterfly valve as well as clean out the intake manifold. With that, there's several just different pieces all along the way that I'm going to have to remove. So I'm going to remove this top part and see if I can clean up and get the bolt out of the back of this and put it all back together. Hope you enjoy. It looks like a large amount of 12mm bolts and a whole bunch of vacuum lines that I'm going to have to be removing. I'm going to try to inspect the vacuum lines as I'm taking them off to see whether or not maybe those are the issue. Maybe I'm getting a big vacuum leak somewhere along the way. Again, we're going to figure out why this car is not idling, and we're going to fix it, and then it's going to be a great car to drive around every day. Alright, so as you saw, this upper manifold is a little bit fiddly to take off, but now that it's off, I'm going to take the outside pieces off. I'm going to go ahead and clean it up quite a bit, and I'll also clean up the engine bay right around there. That way, whenever I put it back in, it's all clean around it. But I've got the upper manifold piece off so I can get the, as you can see, I've got the broke bolt that I got to get out. I'll clean this up. I'll check the butterfly valve or the throttle body to make sure it's clean. I'll clean it up, and then I'll clean this whole thing up and I'll put it back in the car after I clean up around on the car. This was a pretty fiddly piece to get out, but definitely something anyone can do in their garage.
In the next part of the video, you'll see that Danielle and I go ahead and clean the underside of the bonnet or the hood and just start detailing the engine bay a bit. I also use a rotary attachment to sort of clean up some of the pieces under the hood. Of note here, my carelessness got a spark plug wire destroyed, which you'll see me fixing in the next part of the video. These old Nissans use HT leads. I actually had a set kicking around from all of the other Datsun parts that I have, so I take a longer plug that I already have and go ahead and work to switch out the boots and then make it the correct length. And that's what you see me doing here. Again, whenever you're working on your car, make sure to protect your spark plug leads by either taking them off or getting them well out of the way, so that way you don't accidentally tear one in half like I did here today. Now I'm putting all the parts back on the newly cleaned up intake. I think the intake looks so much nicer now with a little bit of silver spray paint, and now I can get it all put back together with new hoses as well. Alright, this is the end of this video. I get the intake manifold put back on and tightened down, but I still do more work on the car in the following videos. Just a heads up, this did not fix my problem. I had plenty more problems that I had to adjust, and overall said and done, I had a warped head and a few intake leaks that I need to get fixed.